Hello and welcome to this demo on how to use my budget and wealth tracker. If you've already bought the tracker, thank you. And I hope this helps you to get started with your own sheet. If you're thinking about buying the tracker and want to see what you're getting into, then this will give you a great overview on all the different tabs that are available within the sheet. This is the real spreadsheet that I use for myself. All the calculations are exactly what I use to work out these financial metrics, both for myself and for our household. And my hope is that it will help to provide a framework that you can use if you're just starting out, and then kind of tweak it along the way and make it your own over time. So let's get started with the most important tab, the budget allocation tab. This is going to give us an overview of where our money is going every month, as well as throughout the year. What we're going to do is we're going to start by entering our income. So in this situation, I'm going to say I earn $3,000 from my day job. I'm then going to remove this income and then hide this so it's a little bit cleaner for us to look at. You can always unhide it later if you want. So the next line is going to tell me how much I have left to allocate. I'm just going to move down to expenses. And for simplicity, I'm going to put in two categories, food and home. I'm going to allocate $800 to food and $600 to home. And then again, I'm just going to remove these and hide these tabs so that we can focus on the rows that actually have values. Next up, we have sinking funds. If you're not sure what sinking funds are, they're basically a way to save up for known expenses. So in this case, let's say I know I need to buy a certain number of gifts for people throughout the year, and I want to save up for that in advance. So I'm going to put aside $250. I'm going to call this gifts. And then again, I'm just going to remove the other rows so that we have a cleaner sheet to look at. Okay, next is general savings. I'm just going to call this savings buffer. And I'm going to put $350 into it. Again, just going to highlight these, get rid of that, and hide this as well. So now we come to the last bit, which is this investments. So I can see that I have $1,000 left to be allocated. So simple enough, I'm just going to put $1,000 in here, and that's going to go into my brokerage account. So now this tells me I have nothing left to be allocated. So I'm going to just hide all of this. And that's it. The allocation for this month's budget is done. So I came in with $3,000, allocated everything. And now, based on what I entered, it tells me I have a savings rate of about 12%, an investing rate of about 33%, and a total of 45% for both my savings and investing rate. So at this point, you can also decide if you want to include your sinking funds as part of your savings rate. Some people do, and some people don't. That's entirely up to you. You just check this box, and this will modify itself accordingly, depending on whether you want to include them and it goes up or not. After all that, we want to move on to the subcategories. For the subcategories, I'm going to put food at home and food at work as subcategories for food. And then I'm going to put subscriptions and maintenance as subcategories for the home. And then I'm just going to get rid of everything else here. So the way everything is set up is that categories should be set up as things that you actually want to track. So for example, if home maintenance was an important category that I wanted to track by itself, then I would set it up as its own category up here and not as a subcategory. For accounts, I'm going to keep things simple. I'm going to set up one checking account and one credit card. And get rid of the rest. Okay, and then I'll just hide everything from down here. And that's it. Now we'll move on to the other tabs, starting with monthly expenses, where we'll see the impact of a lot of the decisions that we've made on this page. So we move on to January, and the first thing we're going to see here is that whatever we've allocated in each different expense category is already automatically filled up over here. Right, we had $800 in food and $600 in home. So let's just hide all these extra rows and move on to filling up some expenses for the month. So maybe on 2nd of January, I spent $40 on a pizza. That's going to be food, and it's going to be food for home, and I paid for that with my credit card. Maybe the next day, I went to the office, and I spent $25 on lunch. That's also food, but this time the subcategory is food at work, and I also charged that to my credit card. I'll also fill in $15 for my video streaming service, whatever that is. That goes under home, that goes under subscriptions, and that goes to my credit card as well. And then maybe in a couple of days, unfortunately, something goes wrong at home. I need to call a plumber to fix something. That's $80. Get it in as plumber. That goes under home and maintenance. Plumber doesn't accept credit cards, so this is going to come from my checking account. And then next up, I know I've got a cousin's birthday coming up, and that's why I've got my gifts sinking fund. So I got them a $60 present. So let's put in a $60 present, cousin's birthday gift. Just comes out from the gifts sinking fund, no subcategory. That came from my checking account as well. And finally, I feel like I deserve a treat this month. It's going to cost me $20, whatever that is, a treat. And because I don't really have other categories in my budget, I'm going to tap on some of my savings that I set aside for treats for myself. I'm going to put it in savings, in my savings buffer. And that came out of my credit card as well. So now, if I scroll back up, I can see that all of these category and subcategory charts have been filled up. So at a glance, I can see what's taking up most of my expenses this month. And here, it also tells me how much I've spent on each category and how much is remaining for the month. So if I just scroll down and throughout the month, let's say I've spent $800 on food, right? Just charges to food and $400 to home. Then you can see that this changes to red and this changes to yellow, which is a warning that I've overspent in my food category and I'm coming close to busting my home category as well. So I personally find it's good to get that visual warning, especially towards the end of the month. Okay, let me get rid of these extra amounts here. Okay, so on the right, you have the breakdown for the subcategories. You have it here and you have it in the graph. And you also have the breakdown for the accounts. So I find the accounts useful because, sometimes you have a credit card that gives you bonus cashback or points or whatever if you spend past a certain amount on that card. So this helps you see how much it is to make sure that you make the most out of whichever card or account you might have. So that's it for the monthly expenses. You fill up everything throughout the month, and then this will go on to populate the other tabs, which you take a look at a little bit later. Let's take a look at sinking funds. So moving on to sinking funds, like I said in the budget allocation page, I want to set up a sinking fund for gifts because I know I'll need to buy gifts throughout the year. I'm estimating that this should probably set me back $600 for the year. So let me just enter $600 up here for my goal. Because I removed all of the other sinking funds, to keep things simple, these rows are blank, but you will see them populated in your sheets. In any case, I'm just going to hide all of these as well to keep it clean. The other thing I need to add in manually is down here in row 18. So you see, I've already got gifts set up. And if I do have existing money in my sinking funds, then what I want to do is add in what the starting amount is so that the running balance up here can tabulate itself. So right now, let's say I've already set up $100 for these gifts. And then I'm going to just hide everything else. It's going to give you a warning. You can just ignore it. And I can hide everything else down here as well. Okay, so now you can see that the $250 that I allocated from my income is automatically populated here, as well as the $60 that I spent on my cousin's birthday gift in January. So this sheet will keep track of everything for you automatically, as long as you fill in the goal and the starting amount. What's important is this percentage filled amount and amount goal. This will help me decide how much I need to allocate towards these sinking funds in the following months. The next tab is the buffer tab. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on the top and pick one of the drop downs, which would be your expense categories. In this case, I'm going to pick food. So most budget trackers will tell you how much you spend per month, but they don't necessarily account for a rolling value throughout the year. So for example, if you're over or under budget this month by $30, how is that going to be reflected in next month's budget? So that's what this sheet is for. The only manual thing you need to do is to enter the starting amount so that the amount left is correct. So let's say I had $200 in my food budget to begin with. Maybe I rolled it over from December last year. So when that adds up together, that leaves me with $935, depending on how much I spent this month. So of course, because I only entered a few items in the monthly tracker, there's going to be a lot left over here, right? So not barely spend 10% of this. However, if you're updating this monthly and you realize that you're consistently busting your budget, perhaps it's a sign to either watch your spending or maybe even allocate more towards that category. If you want to switch to another category, just click the drop down and toggle the top here. But of course, in this case, the starting amount might be different. So what you might want to do is to duplicate the sheet instead. Just click here and click duplicate. And now I can change this drop down to home, change this one back to food, and then maybe I will just rename it to food buffer. And then I'll rename this one to home buffer. So you can do this for as many categories as you want to look at on a rolling basis. Moving on to savings, this is basically a duplication of the buffer layout, just that the drop-down will display the savings categories instead. So again, all you need to do is click that, enter whatever your starting amount is, and everything will automatically update and you're all set. Next up, we have the annual expenses tab. So first, let me just hide these extra rows so that we know exactly what we're looking at. So nothing needs to be manually added to this sheet at all. Everything is automatically pulled either from the budget allocation or from the monthly expenses sheets. At the top, we get a nice view of our income versus our expenses. And on the right, we get this running total of how much we've spent, how much we've earned, as well as how much we spent, as well as the 12-month average and the year-to-date average. So I included a year-to-date average because I find it useful to see an accurate average monthly spend for the current month. Right? So for example, I'm recording this in April. So if you look at the gifts, I spent $60, which would even out to be $15 per month over 4 months, which I find is more useful to know versus the 12-month average at $5. But of course, if you don't find this useful, feel free to right-click here and hide the entire column if you want to just look at the 12-month average. Let's move on to the net worth tab. It's quite straightforward, nothing too fancy here. I'm just going to set up a very basic asset list with a couple of assets. Let's say a checking account and a brokerage. Let's say the checking account has $5,000 to start with, and the brokerage has $10,000 to start. Okay, and then I will hide the rest of the rows. And for liabilities, let's say I just have some generic loan. Could be a car, credit card, whatever it is. And the outstanding balance that I'm starting with is $6,000. Okay, so I'm going to hide all of this as well. So when January comes, I've got to take a snapshot of where my assets and liabilities are for the month. So my checking account goes up to $5,300, and my brokerage goes up by $11,000, which it should, because I allocated $1,000 at least to my brokerage account in January. At the same time, I managed to pay off $200 of my loan, which brings that down to $5,800. So as you can see in the colored cells on top, everything is automatically calculated. On the asset side, checking went up by $500 here, brokerage went up by $1,000 there. So that's $1,300 in assets change from the starting amount to January. And of course, liabilities went down from $6,000 to $5,800, which is exactly what we want. So the net movement is $1,500 in the positive direction, or about 16-17% from the starting amount. All you have to do now is to update this as the year progresses, and hopefully you will see your net worth trending in the upwards direction as well. Okay, let's talk about income streams. If you follow my Instagram, you know I am obsessed with growing what I call non-work income streams, which are streams of income outside of your day job. So the work income streams will be automatically filled up depending on what you entered in the budget allocation sheet. For the demo, it was $3,000 in January. That's fine. I will hide the rest of the rows. For non-work income, let's say I have just a couple of streams. Maybe I have interest from the bank and dividends. Maybe interest is $20 and dividends are $30. And then I'll hide the rest of the rows here as well. So that's all you need to calculate, or rather enter manually. The sheet will do the rest. If we look up here, we can see the total income that we've made in January has gone up to $3,050. And we can see that the split is about 98% coming from our day job and about 1.5% from non-work income streams. So when I look at this, I know that this is something I need to work on to grow this amount so that I'm not so reliant on my work for income. As the year progresses, then the total will be shown here across 12 months, and you can see how this percentage value changes throughout the year as well. At the bottom right, there's a breakdown of what proportion each of your non-work income stream generates. I included this because I think it's a good idea to try and diversify these streams so that you're not too reliant on any one of them in case something happens to that particular stream. Finally, we come to my favorite tab in the sheet, the Financial Independence Tracker. So this cell automatically calculates the whole year's non-work income streams. And this cell pulls the entire year's expenses. And then it tells you how much of your total expenses you've covered with your income streams. So when you first come in, this will look a little bit janky. All you need to do is click on this amount here, uncheck 0, and then these categories will appear with only those that you spent money in for the year. You then want to click on that again and sort it from A to Z. And so now you have all of your categories and sinking funds nicely sorted from smallest to largest. And it will tell you how much of each category has been covered by your non-work income streams. So you can see I'm 83% to covering my gifts. If I can generate another $10 from my income stream, that will bring us up to 60, which will cover 100% of this particular category. And I can look to covering the next category as I start to earn more from my non-work income stream. Of course, right now, this is only filled up with January's figures, but after a year of using the sheet, it will tell you how much of your annual expenses and exactly which categories are now covered by non-work income streams. That's the end of this short demo. I hope it helps you to think about how to set up your sheet in a way that works for you. If you're interested in picking up the sheet, the link is in the description below. You can also reach out to me on Instagram if you have any questions. Thank you.